Mr. Tracy J. Costello, Costello, address 107 North C Street, here in town. Let's see, it's been a while since I've been here. I've asked for a variety of things. That, Tim Stearns thought that a dollar ride would be a good idea, a lot cheaper than any cab. I've seen it in various cities. That was an idea that I brought to the table here many months ago. Never acted upon or dealt with it at all or received at all. About the green lighting, I'm hoping to find out whether the green lighting of the creek is whether the one-way conversion of the streets is completely necessary in order to do the creek. I'm thinking that just, I don't know where you're going to get the money to do all that work. But you have a creek over there between the movie theater and Starbucks. It's already open with willows all around it, all kinds of trees going around it, and a bunch of land there that they're dumping gravel on, dumping. That's got to be stopped. You got to take control of that property over there by the movie theater. It's already ready to go. It doesn't need to be tear out tons and tons of asphalt and parking spaces. Where do you think the people are going to park that go to those businesses over there? They're not going to be able to park anywhere. Plus, you approved that hotel, Summit Lofts. There's no parking next to it. You made it so the occupants of the motel can't park there overnight. That's ridiculous. Now all the parking is spilling over into the residential areas nearby. They don't want it. You've created a problem there. But anyway, you spend a lot of money on the one-way street idea. I'm not sure how much. I've heard close to $60,000 was spent studies. We sure have a lot of potholes here, and they're not getting much attention. There's one by the railroad that finally got attention. Thank you. But no, we're spending way more than we have, and I support Measure B. That's an unfair tax on poor, but thankfully Mount Shasta is not poor. You should have gone to the landholders for the money for the fire and police. They're the ones with the money, not the people spending their hard-earned money in the stores and gas. You should have gone after the people with the property. They're the ones that have the money. So anyway, that's what I have to say. I will vote for Measure B, but I notice none of you guys are campaigning for Measure B. Your own brainchild, and you're not campaigning for it. And the new candidate, Wendy Warwick, said she's against taxes and fees. I saw it on the brochure. So that's no way to get started. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Anyone else in the audience would like to speak? All right, and of course we don't have people coming in on Zoom. So public comment concludes now. We move on to council and staff comments, and as usual, we'll start with the city manager.
Can you hear if this thing's on? Okay. Councilman Redmond, get ready for your Venn diagram. It's actually going to be short, fairly. So the landing development, for those that haven't been listening, Pinsino Holdings has, a year option to figure out how to purchase the property, and there's an additional 1 year to get everything closed. So their thinking right now is that they don't want to part it out, they want to purchase the entire property. We have a working agreement where we've got an appraised value of the entire property. We're taking about 22 acres out of that for public park space that we're chasing a climate resiliency infrastructure grant through the EPA. So with that removed, we've got a informal agreement to sell that portion of the property for $2.6 million. And again, it's informal because part of what we need to do next is go through the requirements of the Public Lands Act. when you're disposing of public property, you need to go through a process where you're putting that property up to bid. You need to tell them how, essentially you're going to divide out that property and how much affordable housing. There's a requirement for a certain amount of affordable housing out there, and Pinsino doesn't want to do the affordable. They're just not well versed in it. So I've been talking to K2 Development, who's well versed in packaging low-income housing tax credits, PLHA credits, grants, and there are 4 tranches of money related to affordable housing that one of the tranches pays for infrastructure for the affordable housing, but also allows you to extend some of that infrastructure to the development site itself. So you're able to pay for at least part of the infrastructure for what Pinsino wants to do on the back of affordable housing. So we need to get through that process. It's going to take us some time. Cosmont's going to help us with that. So we had a meeting today with Cosmont, Pinsino, with our folks internally, and I've already talked to K2. They're ready to sign on. Pinsino's going to contact K2. We're going to form that agreement. K2 is going to chase down the affordable. We're going to work on Public Lands Act and get this rolling. And we've got everything in line. We know there's going to be a fight on our end, but we've got commitment from both parties that they're going to see this through. So another piece of this is, as I mentioned, we've got that 22 acres that's set aside for the EPA grant that we're chasing. To remind people, we have an EPA grant that we performed on to clean up the landing. We've got a clean brownfield site. We have some land use covenants that say what we can and can't do with certain remaining contamination, that it's not worth our while to chase cleaning that very last bit up. So we delivered on that. That's a feather on our cap for the EPA. So what the EPA then did is turned around and said, okay, you guys did a great job on this. We know you've got a project that you would like to do here. So the city received one of 50 nationwide technical assistance grants to help us prepare for a $10 to $20 million climate resiliency infrastructure grant, again through the EPA. So the technical assistance grant is another feather in our cap that's supposed to fast track us. And so we've been in the process of writing the actual climate resiliency infrastructure grant, and we're going to have it submitted by the end of the week. And in a very good sign, the EPA called us Friday directly to say, hey, get your application in. What you're doing is exactly what we want you to do. So we got a really good shot at that. And so what happens there, besides being able to build park space around the retention pond and other parks and other public amenities, it will pay for other infrastructure to serve that park space. But to use that infrastructure for that park space, you have to pull infrastructure across the developable parcels, which then offsets some of the cost of the infrastructure. So we've got affordable housing, potentially EPA money helping us offset that affordable housing, and with K2 on board, they're experts in chasing down transportation infrastructure money, which will pay for roads to the site, onto the site. And again, because this stuff doesn't work in a vacuum, it also requires us to pull in infrastructure to make roadways and other hard infrastructure work. A lot of stuff needs to come together, but we've got all players on board and they're in agreement, and we're moving forward on that. So I'm feeling pretty good about it. I mean, and again, ultimately we're going to have a CEQA challenge from our folks in the city, but that's okay. We have folks with deep pockets, and we're willing to take that on. And I don't want to go too much into what my research has shown. We've got a gentleman who sues over everything. It turns out he acts as a consultant all through the state, in LA, all over, and so it isn't, when we're looking at whether this person is a vexatious litigant, it isn't just that he's got 5 losses within the last 7 years. Here, it's throughout the state. And one of the other points to be considered a vexatious litigant is that if you've lost, appealed once, lost on appeal, you appeal again, which is the case of the Golden Eagle Charter School, which is still out. And if he loses that appeal, I can hear the Gong Show hook coming out. So moving on to the next. I think what I would like to just state and not belabor this is I think Tom did a really great job at our meeting last week. We had a really large turnout, and I thought people were really civil. We took as much time as we needed to make sure that we heard from everybody. And, we've had generally positive feelings towards daylighting. Of course, some folks had specific issues. In a lot of cases, I think we demonstrated that we've done the thinking and we're able to answer some of those questions on the spot. Others will require that we hadn't thought of. We need to go back and we need to work those pieces out in a next ad hoc meeting. The one ways it seemed like we had a pretty mixed reaction to that. And so when we regroup in our ad hoc meeting, we need to look at the comments from that and figure out, are there fatal flaws that are just going to kill us, or are there things that we can work on, that we can pull more people to support it, or whether that goes away. But let's work it as hard as we can. And so I'll be checking with you guys about available dates, and I'll set up the next ad hoc. Okay. And that's it.
All right, very good, Todd. Interim Chief, do you have any comments tonight?
Thank you, Mayor and Council. Not a whole lot to report on. We're kind of down on staffing right now, so we're trying to kind of backfill some positions there. October, kind of unfortunately, is Domestic Violence Awareness Month, and it's also the month that we've taken, it looks like, the most domestic violence cases, several involving weapons and firearms. So we put out some awareness posts on social media with some resources for victims of domestic violence. And then we are making plans for the Halloween activities coming up. We'll have some officers going to the schools and doing some safety talks with the kids and handing out some trick-or-treat bags and candy and whatnot. And that is about all I have for you.
Thank you, Sergeant. Mr. Kellogg, do you have any comments from the Public Works domain?
I really don't have anything that's substantial to pass along. I will say, if you guys have noticed a lot of digging in people's front yards this week and last week, we are finishing up a report that needs to go to the state, basically dealing with possible lead in any of the city water line laterals. And the only way to really find that out is to dig down. This is any house that was built prior to 1986. We need to go through and dig up people's yards right by the meter to verify what they have as far as the piping going to their house. We know what's on the city side. The state report actually wants us to say what's on the private side. So if you see a lot of potholing going on in town, that's why.
If you'd like, I can, the mayor's been really involved with this, with the wastewater treatment plant. Do you want me to go through some of that?
Yeah, that would be a good idea.
Okay, so one of the things since the wastewater treatment plant has gone online is we've done testing. One of the things that we're finding is we have higher concentrations of copper and zinc. Yeah, sorry, had a brain fart there. And some of our testing in-house is, let me back up. So higher levels of copper and zinc than we think we should have. A little over 3 weeks ago, Scores is the engineer of record. Clark Brothers were the people that performed the building of the plant. Pace were the folks that were paying a lot of money for administrative to oversee this. So, we were scrambling to figure out how to get these heavy metals out of here. And I engaged with Pace and said, I know we value engineered out of this the warranty for after this is built, but you are our engineer of record and we have a lot of contracts with you and we expect you to step in because we're not able to solve this. And since then, they've been fully engaged. We sent them new samples and we got results back Friday, and we're finding that our testing in-house is wildly divergent from what Pace found when they expedited our samples, and so we're in range. With copper, our zinc is still a little bit high, so we've got a meeting tomorrow to figure out how we need to get that zinc down to a reasonable level, but it's lower than what we were testing internally. And Ken Kellogg and I were talking about, not that we need to be spending any more money, especially with tight budgets, but the equipment that Brooke is using, some of the spectrophotometric equipment and her assay tools, it's not giving accurate results. So we might have to consider purchasing the right equipment. So to make sure if we're going to bother to test, let's make sure we're getting good results as opposed to sending it out to Pace. And if we pay the expedited amount, it takes a week or two. And if not, which we've been paying the slow boat rate, which is over a month to get a test result. So let's do this in-house and make sure that what we're getting is what we expect. But Pace is fully engaged. We had a site visit last week. Ken, myself, Grant Maxwell from Pace have a meeting tomorrow morning to figure out what we're going to do next, and they're on it. I mean, if we wanted to bring this back to council to start putting people's feet to the fire and threaten lawsuits, the first thing we'd be doing is exactly what we're doing now and chasing down the best we can of how do we resolve this before we'd ever get into a lawsuit or would be kicked out of court. So let's work this, and if we get any sense that anybody's slow walking this, then we need to ratchet up the pressure.
Okay, and Ken, when does the Mount Shasta Resort stop taking water from us?
It will depend on the weather. I would say through Thanksgiving.
Yeah, okay. So we've got a good month to solve the problem.
What's that?
We have a good month to solve the problem before we...
We do, but with the caveat, and I agree with you, and I think we will, but if worse comes to worse, we've got a year we can send it to the leach field without going right to the river. And, we're going to get it sorted.
Okay. So the next question would be whether that particular enterprise zone, that fund is running a surplus, which I think it is, and are there funds available to cover some of the improvements that need to be done, and whether you want to get into an argument with Pace as to who's responsible for that, that can happen, but immediately, are there dollars available to buy equipment to solve the problem, whether it's better test equipment or just equipment to extract the metals? And I think there is. I think that particular fund has a reserve.
I think we do.
Whereas the water doesn't, I think the.
Yeah, I just don't know how much, but I can come up with a
I think it's
number.
pretty substantial, actually,
Yeah.
but we haven't got,
But remember, though,
we haven't gotten final numbers on fiscal 24, but it sounds like we're gonna get them a lot faster this year.
yes, and I don't know if I want to mention this. Yeah, I'll leave it for right now.
Yeah. Yeah. Did you have some comments?
Yeah, through the chair. Is it possible to use weeds test equipment or Dunsmuir's test equipment perhaps to see whether their results jive with our own in-house results?
Well, first of all, I don't know what they have. They've got different types of plants, and usually with spectrophotometric. Are you familiar with spectrophotometric equipment? Okay, so I'm sorry, I'm not going to go down nerddom too much, but basically what you're doing in a very rudimentary sense is you are taking what you're testing for and dropping it in with a reagent that's supposed to react and bind with what you're trying to measure. And what you do is you use spectrophotometry where you're shining a light through that. So based on the particles in solution of what you're trying to measure, it fine tunes exactly that turbidity to tell you what the level is, how low it is, how high it is. And I don't know what anybody else up here is using. Dunsmuir's on an extreme shoestring budget, and they're all using, different technologies. I don't know. I mean, it would be really unwieldy to wield spectrophotometric equipment, which is not small, from wastewater treatment plant to wastewater treatment plant. I don't know anybody who'd sign on to that. But it's a good thought. I
was wondering if the water could be taken to another location
Maybe.
to be tested.
I don't know.
The equipment needed for the zinc and the copper, you're not going to find at Weeder, Wairika, or Dunsmuir. It's pretty darn specialized. We're talking the micro milligram per liter level. Other than a specialized lab like down in Reading, I know Brooke is looking into what exactly she can get that's more reliable than the spectrometer setup we have now, and we haven't landed on a specific unit yet.
Maybe we can look at Amazon for a $100 assay machine that gets 2 stars. We should be good.
If I may ask another question?
Yeah, go ahead.
Going back to the landing, and maybe I came in a little bit later, didn't quite hear. Connection between K2 and Pinsol?
Pinsino, yep.
What's the connection there that you were talking about?
Yeah. So I think I've mentioned this before. K2, 2 brothers, early 40s, have had tremendous success in the North State. They are responsible for the pedestrianization that's happening in Reading and figuring out how to make sense of the soup of the state roadways that crisscross downtown. Many of the high-rise structures you see down there, new residential and younger residents down there of some of these 14 to 20-story buildings are their buildings. They're also in the process of using a large grant that Jessica Lugo, city manager down in Shasta Lake, was able to cobble together to transform Shasta Dam Boulevard with a huge affordable housing project with ground floor commercial that is well on its way to being complete. They've got projects in Orville, all over the state. They're now at a place where they can take on more work. Daniel Nod is a friend, and we talked earlier, and I was kind of pumping him like, hey, this is what I'm hearing from Pinsino. And they really don't want to take on the affordable housing piece here. My sense from them, and this isn't a knock on Pinsino, is it's a very specialized field for somebody to go out and understand how to chase the myriad of tax credits, grants, and whatnot for affordable housing. And they've got a great track record of doing that and actually making money on affordable housing, and then extending some of the grant money, especially on infrastructure, onto sites when they're combining affordable and market rate. And so they're willing to take this on in either a partnership or working in parallel. Daniel now is working up here with K2, is working up or living up here part-time. He'd like to be moving up here full-time, and he wants to see this happen, and he wants to help Pinsino. The other piece to this, as I mentioned earlier, is they're really good at cobbling together transportation infrastructure funds, and they're willing to take those pieces on. He's like, just put me in touch with them. When I talked to Frank Bramante, the owner's rep with Pinsino today on that call, he finally agreed. I'm going to reach out to him, and I sent Daniel a note and said, "This is what's coming your way." He's like, "Great."
So, talking about collaboration.
Yes.
Got it. Okay. And when you talk about, will take us, when you use the phrase, will take us some time, I don't know what that means.
Oh,
so
it'll take
hoping that
us-
you can be more specific.
Yeah. It will take us time with, in California, with the disposition of public lands. You need to run through the Surplus Lands Act. And they want to see a host of things. If you were able to, and I'm not saying we can do this because very few projects that can, but if you're able, they want to see out of a project, they want to see 20% affordable, 15 to 20% affordable. If you package it right, there's open space, and it's in the right configuration in terms of the percentage of X uses, sometimes you can get a waiver. We'll be looking at to figure out if we can assemble this and get a waiver, but if not, we're going to have to take these parcels, what our appraised value is, and put it out through HCD and Surplus Lands Project, and I think it's 6 weeks. We got to go and see if anybody else is interested in this parcel.
And you mentioned Cosmod. Cosmod has experience with surplus
Yeah,
land acts.
they've got an expert in-house who I tried to get 5 minutes with last week, and Joe's setting that up for me. I just haven't gotten the date on it, but I'm going to be talking to them this week to get that rolling.
Okay, thank you.
Yep.
Mr. Collins, anything at this time? Mr. Redmond, no? All right, so I'm going to comment on meetings I went to now, and so I don't have to later on. Yeah. So there was a LOLA meeting at earlier in October, and it was a typical LOLA meeting. The most interesting things coming out of that were Wairika. Wairika seems to have a real knack for finding grants of all sorts. The city planner there, former city planner here, says that they're sitting on $200 million worth of grants, either in the bank or pending disbursement. So a lot going on in Wairika.
There is.
And the other area that's got some substantial activity is South Weed, and I can't remember all the projects, but if you go there, you'll see there's the Chicken Shanty, which is a chain up in Southern Oregon, and they're opening up basically a chicken restaurant, barbecue chicken restaurant in the old Dos Amigos. So that's that meeting. The next one will be in January. For those interested, I'm going to probably let you guys go to that one. The other meeting had to do with the audit committee, which is basically the finance department ad hoc committee. Councilmember Clore and I are members of that. And we met with Melissa, the finance director, and went over two things in particular. So the Weiss group, they're sort of a bond consulting group, is trying to figure out how we can save money by borrowing money to cover our deficit with respect to pensions and pay it back over different time periods. Pay back over 10 years, we save $1.2 million on pension costs. You do it over 15, it's $700,000.
Yep.
If you spread it out longer, it's dramatically less, 20 years, 25 years. But you have a set amount of, you have predictability with respect to your pension costs. If you do this, council will see this in January. We deferred this till January with the new council. So you won't be seeing it in the next few meetings. And they also recommend that you set up additional set aside savings account type of thing for, they call it a trust, 613 trust, something like that.
115.
115
Yep.
trust, to put more money aside for potential pension difficulties or obligations. So don't backburner pension costs. It's advisable to attack this. Have a policy for addressing pension costs now or soon, and actually do something about it. So that'll be coming to council. The final version that Weiss is recommending with the help of the finance director and the ad hoc committee members in January.
And the bigger picture, I know, Tim, you've got a question, but, you know, we're looking at our pension liability over time and how it increases and that it's benchmarked to what the expectations of how the state has us invested and what their expected return is.
Right.
And so we've got over time areas that we have spikes and, you know, depending on what the economy is looking like, you know, there could be substantial spikes. And by going this route, we flatten that curve out so there aren't the, you know, unexpected years where we've got to cough up large sums of money. It's paid for and flattens that curve. There are savings, especially if you're going on a shorter term, but it's ultimately to help us make sure that we've got certainty and it's easier for us to budget and not have catastrophic years.
So Tim, do you have a question before we move on?
No,
Okay.
you both answered my question.
So it actually was interesting and a very problem-solving oriented
Yes.
approach, and I think it has to be taken very seriously in January.
Yep.
I think the do-nothing approach is going to be costly. So the other thing we talked about was Springbrook and the software modernization for the finance department. We were given a flow chart or schedule for when the different modules will be completed. The finance director's comment was that the main difficulty is that we have such a archaic, out-of-date, old-fashioned current system that adjusting it up into this more modern, current, very, you know, basically current system is difficult. And we're not, she didn't advise that we give up, but it's going to take some time. That was my impression. And
Yeah, it's taken us from the abacus age into the 2020s. And so, yeah, there's a little bit of a lag.
Yeah, so it looks like all modules will be in place by the end of this fiscal year, is what I remember. And there's quite a few. As you remember, we bought a package for about 104 this year, the 25, June of 25, yeah. And we bought a package that included many modules for about 140,000, and then the yearly maintenance is 35,000. They have different software writers helping with different modules, so they're handling this month to month, and I'm hoping that, and I'm going to get back with Melissa and find out what's going on with the long-term debt module. I didn't see that as on the schedule, and I don't know if we actually ended up buying it or not.
We have.
I don't think we have, right?
No, we're lagging behind, and I've got notes. There were, and sorry I misplaced them. There were two modules that there was one that Springbrook is way behind on, And, yeah, or getting up online, and there are two modules that together, it's like $2,500 total. That one's accounts receivable, I can't remember the other one, but she feels like they're absolutely necessary, and if we can come back to council, sorry I don't have the details on it right now, but I will, that she thinks that we need immediately.
So that's going to be an additional cost?
It'll be an extra cost, and what we're gonna do this time is if we're gonna purchase these two modules is, we need to have an aggressive timeline written into their standard contract with, a non-performance termination clause that puts their feet to the fire, that they do what they say they're going to do, because sales is very different than implementation.
Yes. Yes, well said. Because the impression we all had, I assume we all had, when we decided to buy this from the sales, and they were salespeople, was that they're going to make this very custom, but very doable software package that solves all our problems and brings us into the 21st century right away. That's actually not happening. And it's worrisome, but we're not giving up yet.
No, we're putting their feet to the fire. We'll get there. And yes, there are issues with Springbrook customer service, but you hit the nail on the head about a very old system that is held together with chicken wire, and how we transfer that to a very modern system. So it's the two.
But we're not giving up, and we're going to get it done,
No,
right?
we'll get
Okay,
it.
because,
There's a phrase, ghostware.
yeah. So that's that meeting. Enough said. I did go to the meeting regarding the one-way couplet and the daylighting of Castle Creek, and I would have to say Castle Creek was met more favorably with less objection than the one-way streets. My takeaways in both cases, if we're going to be, and we're going to have to rely on grant monies to fund these potential projects, is that with respect to the daylighting, it has to be an environmentally friendly or oriented project that improves stormwater quality going into the creeks and rivers in order to get grants to do all the different things we want to do. And I think Tom hints that, more than hints, she's showing how there'll be these retention ponds that help mitigate stormwater runoff that's polluted. So I think that's the main angle, to try and get grants. That was my takeaway. And then on the one-way streets, the couplet, to get the grants there, it has to be an active transportation, has to be part of an active transportation plan, whether it's a general city plan, a la Alta Group's advice, prospective plan, or something smaller. If we're going to get grants, it's going to be from Caltrans, it's going to be for active transportation, and so it's an active transportation plan that benefits from having one-way streets, because we can get better bike lanes, better quality bike lanes in the downtown area. That's how I see it as far as actually getting funding. If we just say, oh, we just want to have this one-way streets because we think it's commercially beneficial, I don't know. Is Caltrans going to fund that? I don't think so.
Given the types of grants over the past few years, a one-way street conversion is more of an esoteric vanity project in the minds of transportation funding grantors, and they're not going to fund them. The only way that we can sell, if the community wants it, a conversion to one-ways, is to sell it as an active transportation project where we add all the bells and whistles, including mid-block crosswalks, Class 3 bike lanes, a whole host of other things that clearly we're trying to make it as bike-friendly as possible and lead with that, because they're still, and this is 10 years on, there is a ton of funding for active transportation projects and getting people out of cars. And so if we're going to have any luck, and it isn't a guaranteed outcome that we will, but if we're going to have any luck at all, we've got to lead with active transportation.
Goal.
Yeah, I thought so too.
Transportation.
Yeah.
Yeah, active transportation first, the one-way streets help develop the active, yeah.
There's funding and there's a
Right.
consistent goal or purpose.
Yeah, yeah.
All right, so those are the meetings. So I'll not have anything to say in the latter agenda item because I just took care of that. Moving on to committee updates, does the city manager have any updates on?
I don't. DEC meets on Wednesday morning, and we haven't had meetings of the other that are listed there. The Library Expansion Committee meeting, my charge was to get with Nolan Tam Architects and have them produce a cost of putting together a plan set, and with the idea with making it pretty bare bones, and they're very close to having that number for us, and then I'll share it with that Library Expansion Committee, and we'll figure out how to move forward on taking those plans instead of a multidisciplinary team out of Nolan Tam coming and actually doing it at prevailing wage, at Berkeley prices. We'll figure out GCs locally that can do this work, which will save us a lot of money.
Go ahead.
This is just off the top of the head brainstorming, but
Yeah.
it seems to me that there are ways of leasing the property to private enterprise that would then build it and lease it back or to the city. Or maybe it's a transfer of property with a lease back, and that may be a way of reducing the construction costs?
I'd have to understand more about that proposal, but I think on the face of it, and I may be wrong, but that presumes that somebody is in the market for acquiring land to support a public library, which doesn't strike me as leading to the outcome of a large income stream. Okay.
Well, that sounds interesting, Tim. I guess it's all about whether
It's a way of funding.
it's a way of financing things, yeah. I get it. I haven't heard of anyone doing that, but okay. Possibility. Let's move on to the consent agenda. A and B are fine. Just wanted to city manager to note that in C, there's a typo. It's August 31st is meant, but the comma's in the wrong place. That probably should be cleared up.
I'm sorry, on what page?
In consent agenda items 7C, when she's at the end of it, when Melissa has given us a report on the revenue streams, it's got a date of messed up the date.
Okay.
Should be, if you read through it, you'll see it should be August 31st. But I just wanted to comment, without taking this out of the consent agenda. So if I know I'm wondering, I'm assuming everyone else is, especially Jeffrey, how we're doing in the first quarter. And we really don't have an answer because the TOT monies from most of the motels in this town come in quarterly, I believe. I think one or two pay monthly. So she stated in her report that there's not a lot to report on quite yet. So hopefully in the second meeting in November, she'll have a clear picture of what the first quarter TOT take is, which is very important. She does mention the sales tax revenue seems to be a bit behind, but her technique for explaining it's a little different than Muriel. Maybe you can explain to her, for council's sake and the public, it's sort of a comparison. So for the first quarter, right, July, August, September, she should have final numbers by the end of November, the second meeting in November.
Yes.
Say, take from the sales tax folks in Sacramento and compare it to last year, so we'll have a good grip on what direction we're going in. At this point, it sounds like we're going down year over year.
Yeah.
That's what she's clearly hinting at. So, yeah, comps are important if we're trailing off in the wrong direction. And I thought we had a really strong July. I did feel out on the street that we had a weak August.
Yep.
And probably an average September, but we'll have to wait and see what the sales tax numbers come in at. But it does take a little while, lag time-wise. But by the end of November, we should have a
Yeah,
good
we
idea.
will. We've got Charlie Pillion up on November 7th, and there are some, last-minute questions that Melissa needs answered, but we'll have things wrapped up, and, she's still sifting through due-froms and other issues in, interesting accounting that she's trying to resolve. And
Okay.
But she's confident that after the 7th, we're going to have a pretty good understanding of where we are.
Okay, that's for the first quarter.
Yep.
September 30th, okay. And lastly, as far as our property tax take, that's not going to be a known thing till the end of December. So to get a really good picture of where we are, it's going to take till January.
Yep.
TOT, sales tax, and so forth. Anyhow, all right, consent agenda number 7. The city manager recommends approval of the following consent agenda items. All resolutions and ordinances on this agenda or added hereto shall be introduced or adopted as applicable by title only, and the full reading thereof is hereby waived. A, approval of minutes, October 14th, 2024. B, approval of disbursements, accounts payable, October 17th, 2024. Total gross payroll and taxes for the period ending October 13th, 2024. C, monthly investment report. Motion?
Approve the consent agenda items A through C by title only.
Second, please.
Second.
All those in favor, please say aye.
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 And aye. Any opposed? Passes 4-0 with Clore absent. Move on to 8, public hearing. First reading of an ordinance amending Mount Shasta Municipal Code, Chapter 12.34, to clarify provisions related to sidewalk dining. So before I hand this over to Public Works Director Ken Kellogg, I just want to tell the council and the folks here that this is about seats on the sidewalk, not about the parklets. And that this is a precursor to a possible major clarification of our parklet ordinance. And I guess that's going to be delayed till next year. Probably take some time to get that organized. Yeah.
So this is a minor amendment to the Municipal Code, Chapter 12.34. And essentially what this does, there's just some couple paragraphs of language that is...
Again.
All right, thank you. And if you want to, sorry, I know you were, anyway, I won't go there. But they are minor changes. The way the outdoor dining ordinance first read, it was directed more towards parklets and more permanent structures. And what we found was there are people that all they want to do is put out chairs and tables that are movable. And what this does is create two pathways. If you are putting out chairs and tables that are seasonal and can be moved, to do that instead of going through a very long approval process, you would seek approval from the Public Works Director, where the Public Works Director would look at your plan, where you're putting these chairs out, as well as the table, and ensuring that you've got a minimum of 4-foot clear zone that would allow wheelchairs and other folks to be able to traverse that sidewalk without obstruction. And it's as simple as that. Mayor Stacklet put out that, yeah, the idea is that we revisit the parklet ordinance later on with, we're debating exactly how to address this internally, but some of the concerns that we have with the existing parklets is that, A, some of them are getting somewhat run down. B, that, they're not crash rated. Do we need to extend the curbs out where those parklets are happening so we have that curb as protective, and make the crossing distance a little narrower that makes it easier for pedestrians to traverse, as well as make diners more safe? Those are things that we want to debate in-house in what is included and bring it to the Planning Commission and this body to make sure that we get this right.
Let's go with clarifying questions at this point.
All right, on 12.34.030, J, second paragraph, when I read this, I think that there's some words that are missing in part of it. My understanding is the intent is to have a 4-foot clearance. And yet when on the second sentence, it says, additionally, all sidewalk dining areas shall be set back a minimum of 5.5 feet from the edge of the curb, as approved by the Public Works Director, where parking is available adjacent to said curb. No question about that. The rest of the sentence, I think, relates to the 4 feet walkway and any fixed sidewalk obstruction, including without limitation, curb lines, tree wells, street trees, fire hydrants, light poles, utility equipment boxes, newspaper racks, and benches. I think the intent there is not that the tables, chairs have to be 5.5 feet from those, but at least 4 feet from those. Am I correct?
It's 4 feet clear zone. What that 5.5 feet does is takes into account exactly what you said, tree wells and that space between the tree wells and the curb. So it's 4 feet clear zone of walking space, and if there was a tree well and any space in the front side of that tree well to the curb would be taken into account.
Well, and I assume the 4 feet would be from the
front of,
tree wells, street trees, fire hydrants, light poles, et cetera.
Yeah.
Is that correct?
Yep.
So I would like to insert, tell me if this would be, make it clearer to me and others, if where it says adjacent to said curb, comma, and if the phrase not less than 4 feet from were inserted in front of any fixed
let me back
sidewalk
you up.
obstruction.
Adjacent to said curb, period?
Pardon?
Adjacent to said curb, period, you said?
Where parking is available adjacent to said curb, it could be a comma, and
Okay.
just insert the words not less than 4 feet from in front of the phrase any fixed sidewalk obstruction, including blah, blah, blah.
Yep. Yeah,
I think that was the intent of this.
yeah, okay, it is.
All right? Thank you.
Shall we call that an amendment?
Well, this was questions. We got a clarification. Can we have that as an amendment? Would that be agreeable,
Sure,
that language?
Have you got that noted?
yeah.
Okay, so in the second reading, that'll be changed.
No, this was what was intended. It just clarifies. It's not a change.
So we won't call it an amendment, we'll just call it a clarification, and in the second reading, it'll be printed for the public to see. Okay. Exactly. All right, so we all good on that, staff? Okay. Clarifications, Jeff? John? Okay. So this is a public hearing now on this item, so folks have 3 minutes to comment on this item. Would anyone like to do that here in the audience? It's a real doozy. Okay, counting down. 5, 2, 1. Public hearing is closed. Further comment or concerns on this item from anyone?
The proposed ordinance of the City Council of the City of Mount Shasta amending Municipal Code Chapter 12.34 as amended to a second reading.
Second.
All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Aye. Any opposed? All right, 4-0 yes vote with Clore absent. Now we move on to the very interesting discussion regarding the 2 unpaved parcels at 415 North Chestnut Street. This has been on our minds for a while. So take it away, City Manager.
Okay. We've talked tonight about the daylighting of Castle Creek and one-way streets, and what we found that if we do move forward with the one-way streets and include Class 3 bike lanes or whatever it is that we're going to do, with the angled parking, we're going to lose a number of spaces. So we need to make up for that excess parking, and we have 2 vacant parking lots adjacent to where we're talking about Castle Creek. And so these 2 lots can serve as overflow parking and make up for that difference in the loss of parking, mostly on Chestnut. And then along with that, if we're going to daylight Castle Creek, these 2 lots have traditionally been used for parking junked cars and cars under repair. And so now that those lots are cleared, above and beyond having additional parking spaces, we would like to control it so we are not looking at things like, you know, hot dog carts or some other use that's, not in alignment with the creation of a park space. But what we have here is the owner has had, a vehicle repair facility, and he was renting it to another gentleman who had a vehicle repair facility and used, again, these lots for junk cars. So there is some contamination on these 2 lots that are consistent with leaking vehicles. The leaking material is consistent with that, and the material doesn't migrate. It tends to get bound into the soil. We did our due diligence. We did a phase 1 environmental, and that which showed us what the contamination is there. Above and beyond that, we did ground penetrating radar to determine if there are underground storage tanks. There aren't. We also said, okay, so we've got this level of contamination that's out there. Is that contamination migrating in any way? And so we dug test wells down to 6 feet where the groundwater is and took water samples, tested it. There was no contamination found. So that's great. And so since these lots are being used for parking now, if we were to figure out a way to seek site control here, we can use these parcels for the same use and seek a categorical exemption for existing facilities. And under that categorical exemption, there is language about small parking lots, so we can use it for this purpose. But this is the giant caveat. As part of this process, we've got these parcels, we had them subleased through August, and we had this additional work to do. And so we continued that sublease through February. We're paying $900 a month. We had a commercial appraisal done on these two parcels. And if there was no contamination and these two parcels could be built to highest and best use according to our zoning code, the property is worth $100,000, according to an MIA appraisal.
For both?
For the two together. But the issue here is they are contaminated, and we can't use it to highest and best use. We can use it for a parking lot, that's it. And so we got estimates of what it would take to clean up these sites, and the initial estimate, and they said it could go higher once they get into the work, is that it would be $500,000 or more. And we'd then have to take that material, excavate it down from the edge of each APN, 6 feet, and cart it down to a facility that takes, which is Red Bluff. It would be very expensive. So the same folks readjusted the MIA appraisal to the fact that the cleanup costs are quite high, and said these properties are worth nothing. Okay, so the owners here, when I approached them, I explained this. I can't recommend purchasing these properties because of a zero value, but council would like to see these two parcels tied up. We need them in relation to two projects. And what he told me after a lot of conversation, where he thought he could sell it to us for $150,000, claiming our comps weren't correct. And I explained to him that an MIA commercial appraisal is the highest level, and they stand by that report. That's just not true. But what we came down to is the minimum price to purchase these that he'll even consider is $80,000 for the two. Or he's willing to engage in a long-term lease and won't consider it unless it's a minimum of 10 years at the current monthly rate of $900 a month with a 2% escalator each year. And so what we have before us is, do we hold our nose because we want to see this project to fruition and tie it up? And so, that's the discussion item, but also I'd like to have council consider the potential that maybe we continue this item until we've got a better picture of what our budget is after Charlie's up here, to see where this money actually can come from, and to see if the 1% public safety sales tax measure passes, so we have a better picture of our financial future, because we do have these properties leased through February, so there is no hurry on this.
Clarifying questions? Go ahead.
Has staff talked with the owner about making a gift to the city?
Your mic cut out.
Has staff discussed with the owner the
Yes.
possibility of gifting the
Yes.
property to the city in exchange for tax
Yes.
benefits?
I don't know another way to phrase this. The gentleman's prickly.
Who's what?
Is prickly. Not a big fan of government. He lives in Chico, and as he phrased it to me, I hold no allegiance to Mount Shasta. And if you guys don't want it, I am sure I'll be able to rent those parcels.
You will.
And,
Very quickly.
has staff raised the possibility
He'll lease that out very quickly.
with him about eminent domain?
Well, we haven't broached that because if you're going to go the eminent domain direction, you just do it and expect a lawsuit.
We should what?
You just, that's not something you discuss with the owner, you just put that in motion and expect that you're going to be sued.
Mr. Collins, clarifying question? Commentary. Nope. I don't have any either, so we'll open this up to public comment. This is a discussion piece. We're trying to decide what direction to go in on this at this time. So would anyone like to comment on the?
Hey, Tom, do you want to say a few words? I mean, you know, you're intimately involved in the design on the project, and, you know, we all know how desirable it would be to tie these up, but, you know, this is a lot to swallow. And I don't know if in our current fiscal circumstance that we can afford it, but I'd love to hear your take on this.
All right, Tom Hesselden's from Mount Shasta.
I've been involved in various land acquisitions over the years with the Nature Conservancy and the Trust, or Siskiyou Land Trust, Trust for Public Land, City of Wairika. What often comes up is what could be called opportunity cost. And when you're dealing with public grants, they go by appraisals. The grants can't cover more than the appraised value. If the city has that flexibility to some extent, I would say that's worth considering. It's just a question of how far to go with it. The land in question would be helpful to the downtown area for parking regardless of what happens with the Greenway on Castle Street or the idea of one-way traffic. So there's going to be a benefit to the community. The idea of leasing it for 10 years, doing the math, that's $108,000, not considering the 2% escalator clause every year. So to purchase it fee title would be significantly less than that. Mr. Brownell is playing hardball, as Todd was saying, but maybe that price could be negotiated down further, because the simple reality is he thinks it's worth more, but if he goes out and tries to sell it on the open market, that contamination issue is going to be there, and it's the owner's liability. So I think it's worth exploring this further or pursuing the discussions, negotiations with Mr. Brownell further, and at the same time, it'd be worth it for the city to further research how far it could go in purchasing something that's over appraised value, but has the opportunity cost benefits to the city that over a period of time could arguably be well worth it, because parking does come with a premium here in this town and it has a value. So anyway, I would absolutely encourage looking into this more, because it would really help the city.
And you favor purchase over lease?
You
You favor purchase over lease? You think it's a right way to go?
Yes, yeah, because of all the circumstances involved, you know, I think it gives the city more control over the longer run. It knows it wants to use it as parking. It doesn't want to build a building on it or turn around and sell it in the future. So what is the value of that parking over an extended period of time? And to purchase it fee title now would be less than to do the long-term lease.
you know,
Thank you, Tom.
there's no budging on price. I've gone round and round, and one of the points that I made with him is, we're essentially doing you a favor. We're taking over your environmental liability, and you're going to be carrying this on. And when you pass this, when you pass on, you're passing that environmental liability onto your kids. And he's like, "That's great. I'll be able to rent this property."
He doesn't care at all.
It's like whatever.
Yeah. So he basically has full confidence that he'll be leasing that land for $900 to somebody.
You know, I don't know if he has full confidence. He claims he's got 4 people waiting to
Right,
rent that. but,
as
you know,
I've heard that too, so.
It could be, you know,
Could be a bluff.
it could be vaporware. I don't know.
Yeah. More comments? Anyone? Come on up.
Nick, City of Mount Shasta, is there any potential, I'm assuming not, that down the road there would be liability from the contamination spreading?
So that was the point, and I didn't share this with Mr. Brownell. It's the point of why we did ground penetrating radar. No loss, no leaking underground storage tank, and the borings and the testing of groundwater. The types of material that we found under the environmental, you know, under the EIR is, you know, is consistent with junk cars, and that type of material tends to get bound in the soil very quickly and doesn't migrate. And what I wanted to do when doing, you know, dropping the test pits and doing the water testing is to confirm that indeed nothing is leaching from that property, and it's not. And it's been used, you know, I'm not a rocket scientist, but I will tell you that my assumption would be that the amount of dripping waste from a yard where we're, you know, junk cars and cars in various states of repair would be much greater than vehicles from tourists and residents that are parking to, you know, either shop or enjoy the new amenity at the daylighted Castle Creek.
Yeah, thank you.
All right, thank you, Wendy. Anyone else? Okay, we're going to bring this back to council for further commentary and thoughts.
I'm willing to start.
Go ahead.
First of all, I agree with the city manager that this can be put off to a further meeting after January, or at least maybe before January, but
Yeah.
we only have one meeting in December.
November. Yeah, you know, after the election and after Charles is up here and we can put our questions to bed.
Right. I did provide city manager a printout from the municipal law handbook that is basically current on eminent domain. Sometimes people get scared with the term eminent domain. It's basically not a big deal. There is a step-by-step process that goes through. If a city and property owner do not agree on the price for property, an appraisal is done. The city can offer the appraised value of the property, which is a good faith offer. If the property owner doesn't accept, then there is a set procedure that goes through with a court. It can actually go to arbitration or mediation, but a judge can decide, all right, what is the fair value of that property? So I've asked city manager to provide a copy of that printout to each of you, each of the council members, so that you can see the step-by-step process and exactly what's involved. And I do support the idea of attempting to have further discussion with the property owner to see if there can be a voluntary agreement reached that isn't substantially over the property value, fair market value. But if not, the Constitution, California Constitution and California statutes lay out the step-by-step procedure as long as the city has a public purpose for that property. And the city does have a public purpose for the property.
Mr. Collins?
Well, let me start with the end of it, which is I support purchasing the property. But why I support purchasing the property, I think I'd like to explain.
Develop, yes, go ahead.
I'd like to develop that. On page 47 of our handout are the population statistics for the past 10 years. And Mount Shasta is slowly drifting down. And if you go back 30 to 35 years, we're still under what it was 30 years ago. This is not the way that if you're a business, and in essence, this town, the government of it is a business, you need to grow. The parking lot is a piece in a larger plan to grow, but I wanted to start with, well, why? Because we're shrinking, and we've got constituents who complain bitterly about fees going up because they're being spread, because costs are going up and the population isn't. And that's a long-term problem. So in this, in our packet, this parking lot was tied to the potential project called the Shasta Creek Greenway. That's the one that had all the pictures in it. But it was also mentioned that there was an earlier project called the Castle Street Park. And let me be very clear about this. I understand that the Greenway allows, if you do the whole thing and you end up in retention ponds, you can go for grants relative to water cleansing in those retention ponds. I get that. But that's unknown hundreds of thousands of dollars of costs to get a greenway, to get the waters down to the retention ponds, where people who would literally want to be going there. Well, let me back up just a second. On page 159 is the benefits and trade-offs of this whole objective. And this is, I can't tell you how important this is, because it's kind of the bottom line, so to speak. The very first bullet is, let me see if I can find this. The benefits would include a powerful visual and experiential remake of the downtown that would draw more people to downtown and entice them to spend more time there, yielding increased local economic and quality life benefits. Now that is one heck of a great benefit, if in fact this park was going to do that. And the longer discussion about this park, because literally you're talking about a width between these two tables, where there would be a curb over on that table and cars driving by, and a creek at this table, people would be expected to hang out in between a driveway where people are parking and cutting through. This is the Castle Street part of it between Chestnut and Mount Shasta Boulevard. It is, I'm not trying to suggest that this wouldn't be a wonderful visual addition to the town. It would be beautiful. But relative to actually having people want to come here and hang out and have economic benefits from it, when this town would have to spend hundreds and hundreds of thousands of dollars, no matter how many grants we got, to make this happen. You know, the earlier mentioned one, the Castle Street Park, which is just that little area between Chestnut and Mount Shasta Boulevard on Castle Street, that becoming an entertainment area with a daylighted, the creek daylighted in just that section with 3 little restaurants that we can sell off the ground underneath it because we own it, that would have the only restaurants in town with views of the mountain, where you could have rooftop dining, single story, or creekside dining. That starts to become a proposition that'll pay for itself, and not have to really shell out a whole lot of money. But all of that's just down in the future, because we're back to the bottom line of, well, what's in front of us is, do we buy this land? And if there's 3 reasons for me to buy this land.
What are they?
One is, we're gonna do this Shasta Creek Greenway thing, in which case you gotta have it.
Yeah.
2 is, you're gonna do the small version, the Castle Street Park version. Still gotta have it. Or 3rd is, you want to invest and look 10 to 20 years down where, God willing, our town will have grown and we will need more parking. And we're looking at it today as a long-term investment in parking, which, by the way, let me be very clear, this will not be popular, but my suggestion for those parking lots is they be a paid parking area, not free parking. We're going to have to shell out large dollars for this with very low daily parking fees, $5. Over time, you can pay off the investment because, again, this is people's money. You're going to spend it and provide additional parking. Because we're having to write a check for it, I think it's reasonable to ask that we have a minimal return just to cover the cost of it. That's it. Anyway, that's my bottom line. Thank you, Mayor.
Yeah, if you actually charge $5 and you're sold out in that parking lot, which is 24 spaces, Tom? What do we think will be 24 spaces? 24 or 30 spaces in the 2 parcels?
20 spaces, and then on the lot that Ace Hardware owns, that it has angle parking on,
Yeah.
by buying Brownell, you can widen that out and do 90-degree double-lane parking.
Okay.
That gives you 4 additional spaces on that side. There's 14 spaces there now.
So 24 spots.
24.
Yeah, so if I did the math, you raise about $37,000 a year, so in a couple of years, if we end up at 80,000, it's paid back, so that's not bad math. But anyhow, you like purchasing it? You like purchasing it?
I am all for the eminent domain angle, because if he wants to play hardball, let's just take it from him. The value is 0. I mean, he's got nothing. Let's just take it.
So that's,
eminent domain.
that's for
You made
further
it clear. I
discussion.
was going to
Okay.
ask about eminent domain. Thanks for the explanation. Let's get it done. Screw him.
All right, do you want to do a continuation till second meeting in November?
Yes, motion to
Hold on.
continue. I'm sorry, to when?
I think we should purchase
Just one more comment. I know we're going
Okay,
to
gotcha.
we're going to continue anyway, but the eminent domain is certainly a viable possibility. But I think we need to also be clear that that's not free. That does
My legal costs, yes.
the legal fees.
Are the legal fees cheaper than the 80,000 he wants? You're shaking your head yes, Tim? Yeah, I'm fine with that then.
Well, right, but you won't get it for 0.
The judge is gonna split the difference.
I'm not worried about the 0, but if it's less than 80,000 to just take it, let's take it.
Well, let's do some real simple math. If you had $25,000 in legal fees and you end up winning over a year and a half from now, and the negotiated rate for both parties and the judge comes and says, well, it's worth 60. We lost $5,000 and a year and a half in time.
Yeah, but most likely, it's less, but
Since I'm thinking it would be somewhere between 30 and 40 the judge would settle on.
probably, but here's the other thing that happens when you engage in eminent domain. Other people in the community then get, for lack of a better word, sketchy that if you've done this here, who you taking next?
Yep. Who's next on the hit list?
Right.
Who's the next one to the vacant lot? We need parking.
All right, let's go to continuation.
All right, motion to continue this, when did you say,
Yeah,
November?
second meeting in November.
To the second meeting in November.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. And aye, any opposed? We continue 4-0, one vote, one being absence of quorum. We'll move on to number 10, discussion of possible action, process of and cost recovery for snow removal in the downtown business area. So before Mr. Kellogg takes over introducing this, I just think it's clear. The downtown business district, this is about the businesses in the downtown business district and what they currently pay, $12 a year, right? Based on a 1982 resolution. That, I just want to say, that dollar amount now is $39 and change, so a little bit below $40. So we have not kept up with inflation. It would be helpful to be getting $40 from all the people, and ultimately, I think, at the very least, we should get to that, and I think everybody could handle $40 a year. But we have grander vision on this item, so go ahead, Mr. Kellogg.
Question, would you like me, I know we've already gone over this numerous times, but I can read through this and give you the definition as per this background. I'll go through it again. And then there will be questions. So currently the city does not charge residential and commercial accounts for plowing the streets. The city does charge accounts for clearing sidewalks and for wheel loader and dump truck snow removal services from the center of the streets in the downtown commercial district. Under this proposal, the city would minimize or shrink that center plowing, loader removal, and sidewalk clearing services as it needs to clear the streets in a timely manner to reduce the possibility of hazardous conditions and to restrict expenditures for contracting heavy equipment operators. All billing charges to customers getting city snow removal services would be finalized by June 30th at the end of the winter year. Then customers would be charged via their business license fees for the cost, with the cost divided equally over the following 12 months. The city will, under this recommended action, center plow, remove snow from medians, clear sidewalks on Chestnut and Mount Shasta Boulevard from Alma to Water Street, including all cross streets. Snow would be cleared on both sides of Chestnut from Lake to Alma, then snow would be removed from the medians and sidewalks would be cleared. The north side of Mount Shasta Boulevard from Alma to East Jesse would be plowed to the west side of the street, consistent with current practices. No snow removal or sidewalk clearing services would be available from the city for that stretch. It appears the most equitable way to allocate charges is to base it on building square footage. Residential properties shall not be charged, as this is an additional services to benefit commercial businesses only, as per our city ordinance. To enable sidewalk clearing on existing sections as narrow as 4 feet, an additional piece of snow removal equipment will be purchased, with the cost being depreciated over a 10-year period. And I will add a few other facts. This was changed as per conversations we've had with John Kenny, our city attorney. He made it very clear, as per the existing ordinance, this is an additional service offered to promote the downtown businesses. Clearing the sidewalks, clearing the parking on the side of the streets. It's an additional service to benefit the commercial businesses only. We can adjust that fee through this ordinance, the revised ordinance, but we can't start charging all the property owners. The residential property owners, the empty lots, are not benefiting from this additional service as per the ordinance. To do so, we would need to put it up for a vote and get a 2/3 majority. The reason for going on square footage instead of lineal footage, again, by going square footage, you're tying it directly to the commercial business. If we went lineal footage, we're going back to associating it with the property and not the business. So we keep it on a square footage basis. The last part is, what we're dealing with tonight is for sidewalk snow removal. It doesn't touch on removing the snow from the median that we plow to the center, because the existing ordinance, as it is now written, talks about clearing the sidewalks and plowing the snow to the center of the street. It's totally silent on actually removing the snow from the center of the street, so that it will be a future action that we'll bring before the city council to add that in, but that will be requiring us to change the municipal code.
And, you know, and John is researching what we can do for the removal of median snow, whether that actually needs to go to a vote, as well as an ordinance rewrite. So we're here tonight to see about, you know, passing, you know, recouping the cost of sidewalk snow removal for the businesses within the business district. And once we get clarity on the removal of median snow and how we go about that, we'll bring that back.
Okay, well, I know I have clarifying questions, but we'll start with Mr. Stearns and work over here.
All right, thank you.
Mr. Redmond.
All right. So I understand that this has nothing to do with charging for snow removal from the street, correct?
Correct.
All right. Second, the existing ordinance that was adopted in,
1982.
I was going to say even earlier than that,
That's what it's somewhere in the
but
literature.
decades ago.
Yep.
Basically, that created the downtown business district. And then there was a fee for sidewalk removal. That fee was not charged based upon square footage of buildings, if I understand correctly, correct?
My understanding, that's an
Correct,
excellent
correct.
point. Yes, it was. If you
was.
read the ordinance, it's for the properties.
It was per lot, but not per square footage of buildings. Do you have a copy of the ordinance so that all of us can see that, how that was?
I do not, but
enacted?
you are correct in stating it was tied to the property. And that is something else I wanted to bring up.
So, go ahead and bring it up.
I wondered why our billing did not go along with the ordinance. And I don't know this for a fact, but I think Mr. Kenny was involved with this years ago and brought up the same point I'm bringing up now, that he reinforced that it is a benefit to the businesses and it has to be billed through the businesses, not the properties.
Through
The
business licenses, yep.
And I suspect that is why that is not totally in line with the existing ordinance.
And the billing through business licenses, for the size of each of those businesses is how we can recoup our funds, as opposed to basing it on residential, where it's a different animal than what the original ordinance allows us to do. And if we're asking for residents to reimburse us, again, it's divergent from the original ordinance, and it would require, most likely, a 2/3 vote in favor of it. And, yep.
I understand that, but what I don't, I think if staff is going to ask council to amend an ordinance essentially, or to change the fee based upon an existing ordinance, we ought to see what that original ordinance was that set the fee, how it was set. And we don't have that before us. And I've been in town for a bit over 30 years. I have been on the Downtown Enhancement Advisory Committee. I've looked at ordinances that I thought would be relevant to the downtown business district. I haven't come across anything that suggests that the plowing was based upon square footage of building rather than per commercial lot. So I don't think a resolution that changes the ordinance can be by resolution. If you're going to say the fee should be based upon square footage of a building, I think that is substantively different. It's a substantive change to the ordinance itself. And I think that would require changing the ordinance, not resolution. So I certainly am not in favor of this resolution tonight. I would not vote in favor of this first because staff hasn't provided the underlying documents that City Council should see before we vote on it. And secondly, I think this is a material change to the ordinance itself, the intent of the ordinance, by charging by square foot of a building rather than.
So my suggestion, Ken, is we'll bring this back with the original ordinance, A. B, John Kenny read this. This was his direction. Let's make sure that maybe the two of us talk to him together to figure out why he feels that the route we're taking makes sense and see if that meets the sniff test in terms of logic with the two of us on that call. And, and if it's consistent, we'll bring it back. And if it is not, then we'll come back with another approach.
Okay, so, yeah, Tim, I think you're really clear on what you meant, and let's let Jeff follow up. He may be asking the questions I'm going to ask. Go ahead, Jeff.
Just a few questions to clarify, because it's kind of complicated. The existing ordinance covers sidewalk clearing, which is an incremental service that the city provides relative to just generic street clearing. But because we generically street clear in the downtown commercial district, we also have to loader and dump truck, clear all that from the center of the street. That's correct, right?
Except for the original ordinance was, when we were plowing, but not removing the center median to the landing. And that's why that original ordinance was silent, because it wasn't a practice that we engaged in.
Right. So this really is a two-step. Let me make sure if I understand this. It's a two-step situation in front of us. One is we need a clarification and potentially an adjustment on the piece of municipal code that would allow us to raise fees on both, by resolution, to both the sidewalk and the center street clearing, loader and clearing of the snow off the center of the street. We would need a clarification that it's okay to do that, and then we would need to vote on that first.
Well, there's two things. One, the original ordinance did, as you stated, was clear on businesses paying a $14 a year fee for the removal of snow on sidewalks. And so John Kenny, when he read this, and, Councilman Stearns may be right, but we want to go back, look at the original ordinance related to the removal of snow from sidewalks and say, John, walk us through why you believe under this that we're able to just raise the fee, because I think there was a calculation there based on 1982 standards that we can update, and we can just raise that fee. It allows us to.
You can just do inflation adjuster. It
Well,
would be $40.
What it states in there, now that I remember, is it states that we're allowed to ask for periodic increases to meet the cost of us removing snow from sidewalks. That was what is in that ordinance. Now that I'm remembering that piece, since it didn't mention anything about the removal of snow from a median, that's a different animal, and that will require an ordinance change if we do want to recoup for that money. And if we're going to do that, it may involve going to a vote.
Okay, so.
One more question?
Yeah, go ahead.
Is it the intent of staff to direct council that these changes, whatever they end up being, be affected such that charges could be, we could start charging businesses this winter?
For the sidewalk snow removal.
So are you suggesting that step one is we're just going to make some increase for sidewalk snow removal based on costs and not address the median snow removal?
No, get on that, and but it's not going to be it's got to be written. B, it's got to go through a first and second reading.
Okay, so, yeah, so for clarification purposes, we have code related to a downtown business district to charge $12, that's the original fee from 82, for sidewalk clearance. That is clear.
Yep.
Is it clear who's paying the $12? Is it every business in a building regardless of size, square footage wise? Or is it by building, which would be a whole lot less payers of the fee? It's per business license, right? In that area.
It states for businesses, and it also states in there, and we do need to bring that ordinance.
Right, for
instance,
instance, the building with Soul Connections has a second story with several businesses in it. I assume that they're paying the $12 per year. Am I?
Yes.
Because I heard in previous discussions on this that there are something like 170 businesses that are paying this $12. Is it that much?
Yeah, it's a lot.
And a lot of little businesses.
More than you'd think,
Like the business over where Directions used to be, it's got several little businesses on the second and third story. They're all paying this $12, I think. That must be. So, but is that clear in the ordinance? Because we don't have it in front of us. Is the ordinance just say that it's the building? And so the building is one landlord that's paying the $12. That's not going to add up to much money at all. So somewhere along the line, we started charging all the businesses that have an address within that business district the $12, which is very digestible. Should be 40 now, which would be helpful. And that is the simplest way to deal with this. You just go an inflation-adjusted price. Hey, folks, we forgot to do escalators based on inflation, and so it should be $40 now, one time per year. Can you handle it? Yeah, okay. So that's like the simplest solution to get some more money.
Yeah, it states businesses.
There should be.
It states businesses, and it says that within that ordinance that we can ask for periodic increases to ensure that we're covering the cost of providing the service.
There must have been
But hold on, Tim.
a resolution that was adopted.
But hold on. Is it clear that it's all the businesses within the district, small, large, buildings with multiple businesses? I'm just wondering if we're incorrect on that. It was just going to be the building owners.
Well, that's what we don't know, because
Yeah.
Presumably, there was a resolution that the city council adopted at some time in the past that said, here's who's going to pay, here's how much they're going to pay. We don't have that.
Yep, correct, and we need to bring it and be able to demonstrate with the paper in front of us to say, this is what it says, this is what it allows us to do without changing this ordinance. According to John, it does. But we'll bring that back at the next meeting. And,
Okay.
And we'll have
So
it.
there's a fair degree of clarification that needs to go on in the process of figuring out and there needs to be a new fee. Come on.
Yes.
I mean, at least $40. If we end up just going with a set fee per year, I can't settle for less than 40. That's the same dollar amount, folks.
Just so you know,
John's happy with that. I think Tim's happy with that.
that's $6,800 on fees that we're paying about $75,000 for.
It's not enough is what you're saying.
Yeah.
Yeah.
There's no question that fee has to be increased, but the question is,
The bigger question is, how do we pay for city services in some meaningful way if the $40 doesn't even take care of that?
John's
So-
statement was, we're in the clear, the way the ordinance is written now, that as long as we don't make it residence-based, the way it's written, we're able to increase the fee for businesses within.
In the district.
Within the district, and he suggested that we pay it, that we charge based on square footage.
He does suggest that?
Yep.
Okay, interesting. Well, that's going to be held less favorably. Yeah. But I just wanted to point out, this whole discussion started because of someone way further downtown that essentially wanted to join this business district, kind of.
Yeah.
What he was really looking for was Center Street plowing to
Yep.
open up the parking spaces in front of his hotel, motel, and he wanted to be treated equally. And that's, given that this is a downtown business district, and even center plowing is not part of the ordinance, this is a way more complicated subject than any of us thought we were getting into. And Mr. Collins thinks he's got something that's going to make it more troublesome.
Well, because this is a downtown business district ordinance, am I correct? The map as drawn on the south side of South Mount Shasta Boulevard, the southern ends that they go out to Water Street, I don't believe that's part of the downtown business district.
That's sorry. Hey, I think this needs to all be clarified.
That's correct.
Yes, so what does that do to an ordinance?
So you're saying this item expands the downtown business district, right?
Or charges people who aren't in it who may not be covered by the ordinance?
Right. So,
So sidewalk clearing, it can only be consistent with the business district as it was just defined in the original ordinance.
Yeah.
Yes.
I think we just need to push this off till
Yep.
the next meeting
Yep.
and
Okay.
have John Kinney.
that said, our motion on this,
Even the next meeting, is it even worth then, or do we just wait till a few more meetings out? I mean,
Well, they want to do it.
they've got, this is very convoluted.
Right, but they want to get this done for this year's charges.
Okay. Does any of this matter if Prop B passes, or Measure B?
Oh, yeah. Yes. We're still, we're,
So can we just wait till this?
we're in the
January?
business of cost capture, and we're not.
we'll pick your date in November. You want a motion to?
Okay, well, we've pushed it off to the second one with the last one. Motion to push this off to the second meeting in November.
Is that okay with you?
Sure.
that staff just bring it back when you can, that would be maybe the next meeting.
Yeah, we could. I mean, this, I feel like this sidewalk snow clearing ordinance, I should have been, over this more when staff report was written and make sure the original ordinance was in there. But, it was pretty clear to John when he explained it to me. It's just left my brain. Maybe I'm early onset Alzheimer's, but I will make sure that I write it down. So if,
You just need to get more sleep. So,
Yeah.
does anybody know how many businesses are in the business district?
No.
Exactly? Anybody? Anybody know how many businesses there are that are paying this?
Well, you said
70. Yeah. All right, so go ahead and read motion.
Okay, so motion to delay or table this until the second, or to whenever staff can come back. Okay.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Aye. Any opposed? All right, so that's a 4-0-1 vote to continue this to a meeting in November. All right, so continuing on, I believe there are no outside meeting reports. They've all been covered, correct? All right, very good. I don't suggest we add any more future agenda items unless someone really wants one. Nothing to my left, nothing to my right. Very good. So we will adjourn this meeting at 7:24. Okay, nobody complains about that. Very good.